evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Not They video for an earnings filled after the Fed, January 27th, 2022. Let's start with some earnings. That's been the theme all week. We had this on Tuesday, Wednesday, which was a Fed day, so we're past the Fed day, but we still have earnings. And some big names have given us some surprises. Right now, after the bell, we are looking at Apple. Stock AAPL has traded to the upside after earnings, again after the bell, and it trades at the moment. Always have to say at the moment. Microsoft certainly reversed after the bell and before the opening bell, but right now, Apple trades up into the 166 per share level. And what we'll do is take a look here on the daily chart. This is our daily, and we have Don's weekly expected move or earnings-based expected move indicator. And that's just taking the current volatility and seeing what the projections are from the option market and those strikes and the straddles and everything that puts those volatility strikes about 173. Didn't see this one, but down to about 140. Double check, about 145. Where is Apple trading at this minute? Straight up into that upper bound of its earnings-based expected move. And as we see this Friday session, that's going to be a pivot point upwards in the 172 or 3 or so per share level. Currently, Apple stock is trading here. And I think we'll go back to Apple later in the video. But before we look at other stocks, not to be outdone, Mondelez, its expected move, it's going down. Takes us to about 64 per share, roughly speaking. And that is currently where the stock trades at about, not quite, but at about that level. So Mondelez at the moment trades roughly here at the 66 bound, and it's going to be volatile after hours. So that's a earnings update from Mondelez. One more stock, and it's a big one, it's Visa. We can get a sense about the broader scope of economic activity, credit cards and their processing by looking at Visa. And its expected move is roughly $16 or 15.5 up or down. And now that we have the earnings behind us, $1.81 per share, we're seeing it trade in the upper bound of its earnings-based expected move. And that's about 219, just shy of about the 220 or 221. These are levels to watch into Friday's session on these particular stocks. Visa has an upside surprise. Apple has an upside surprise. Mondelez to the downside. Speaking of to the downside, we had a little bit of a surprise yesterday, at least in Tesla. So we'll take these expected move indications off, and that doesn't count. Earnings are already behind us. That indicator doesn't know that, but we do. So in terms of what Tesla reported, their earnings per share, their conference call, and everything took place after the close. And we can see there's your conference call. There's the earnings in Tesla. And that was a volatile move. You saw the stock trade from 880 all the way to 970. That is if you saw it trade overnight. If you didn't see it trade overnight, then it's actually down at the opening bell. There's your opening bell. And that took everything and more. So Tesla shares are trading, or at least did trade, down to the lows of the session. And that's taken it just shy of 800 per share, which is, strangely enough, I would say a level we haven't seen in a while, but we last saw it around September and October of 2021. And it's down into that 200-day simple moving average. After hours, anything notable on Tesla? Sure, one more probe to the downside. That's about 820. And we see a 20-point move. Tesla clearly is a volatile stock. So just quickly, we'll take those levels and look at what happened today on the broader perspective. So just to name a few, Dow Chemical had earnings at the bell, and it was a trend to the upside. There is your daily chart. There are the earnings, and there's the reaction, trend day to the upside. Visa reported just a moment ago, but MasterCard reported this morning. And we saw it play, was actually an intraday or a little swing from the 330 per share level up to 360. These levels are horizontal support levels. The middle is about the mean, and that's about 350, just in terms of the swing perspective. And currently we see that trading up at the top level of its midpoint of its upper range. And that's MasterCard Danaher, not a stock that most people trade, but it did have earnings. But you may or may not trade it, but you may eat there. It's McDonald's. And although it had a steady uptrend for the bulk of the later part of 2021, 2022 has not been too kind to McDonald's shares. Earnings came out this morning, and one more, Altria. It did have a boost to the upside on its earnings pre-market. What's on the playing field? What's coming up on Friday session? Anything of note? Sure. Caterpillar. We'll have Colgate-Palmolive, not to forget about it. Its earnings take place tomorrow. Caterpillar, something we may be watching, will take place tomorrow as well before the bell. That's Friday. And Chevron, Texaco, Chevron Corporation, which is part of the energy sector. For the most part, that had a good session today. Chevron shares were up 2%, and that actually is a new 52-week high. That is in play. Charter, and those are the names reporting, at least in terms of the S&P 100 on Friday. So that will be in focus for your trades or for Friday's session. Anything abnormal happened in today's session? Sure. It was after a Fed day, and we'll take a look at the broader perspective. We'll actually start with the SPX and note anything out of the ordinary. Market is playing off of this 4,300 level. That's critical. We've dipped a little bit beneath it in the later part of 2021, dipped under it just down to almost 4,211, 4,200 in the broader SPX. But we've held that level like grim death. Think about this really as the edge of the cliff. 4,500, Don and I had referenced that spot as being very, very key. And if that were to fall, that would open up a pathway lower. We never know the future, but we know that these support levels are important reference points. And if they break, the most recent one was 4.5, about 4.540 or 4.550, and that broke. And that sent us about 3 trend days in a row to the downside. And the market has had trouble holding that level, but it is trying the best it can. The bulls are at their last line of defense on this key level. That's again 4,300. We're just talking the S&P. Back to the weekly chart. This is also a critical level. And this is the comment that if we ever lost this 4,500, that's a 20-day exponential. It held for the bulk, almost all actually, of this post-COVID rally. And this is the first time it broke, and it broke hard. So in trends, when the market breaks a key rising support level, it tends to fall all the way to the next target. And that was 4,300 being the 50-day moving average. More importantly, I think the prior low. That is the same conversation we're having here. If the bulls, the buyers, the support dip buyers, and the traders do manage to rally the market higher, you could see a good push back to 4,500. That's your upside target going into February. Failure to do so and to really break this 4,300 level on the price chart, that could open up a big drop, and that could be significant. Up first would be 4,000, and then beneath that. The Nasdaq has already shattered those support levels. It's already beneath that key reference, and that key reference was 14,000 and about 500. The Nasdaq is under that, so its key pivot, roughly speaking, to be simple, is about 14,000. That's the Nasdaq futures. In the Dow, similar story. It's hold or fall, hold or break, mountain drop zone cliff beneath. That's 33,000 in the Dow mini futures. And the Russell failed to hold its support on the broader, see that consolidation range, similar to what we saw in 2019, and actually very similar, to be honest. You had a consolidation range for the better part of a year, an upside break that failed and took us through the downside. How about 2021? Consolidation at this for us, 21.25. The upper point is about 23.25. This is the Russell futures. Upside break, failed, shot through the bottom on the lower side. That's the Russell. And these are the broader indices for the equity market, mainly noting how key those support levels are. Something which has defied the sell swing or the weakness, especially in technology stocks in 2022, has been crude oil. And we're going to keep watching Chevron, maybe ExxonMobil. It reports on next week. So we'll watch those closely because they're tied into the energy sector, and crude as a commodity. This continued to make higher highs and continued to push to the upside, trading just shy of about the 90 per barrel level. Other comments before we turn to the earnings. Gold futures continues to trade in this sideways triangle. It does have key support about the 1750 and 1850. I think it's better seen, not like the Russell or not like Amazon, which has a longer term support level. It's more of a converging trend line or wrap around central value or fair valuation at about 1800 per ounce. That's gold. And the bond market, which is in focus because of the Fed raising rates, could raise rates additional, maybe up to 5 times in 2022. So goes the headline. And if that's the case, you'll see yields trade to the upside. Bonds could be weaker in that scenario. And we'll finish with, we'll look at a couple things. TNX is our Treasury Yield. On the bigger perspective, it is downtrending, but the focus in 2022 is the increase, or the Federal Reserve, raising interest rates. Minimum of 3 times, maybe as much as 5. And that could put upside pressure on the longer dated 10-year notes and, of course, 30-year bonds. I mentioned I'd look at Apple before we closed. So Apple's weekly chart, as it had earnings and played it up, this is what the market in general is facing. A weekly chart support bounce, a weekly uptrend level. Currently, that level has, at least if the earnings and the after hours reaction hold, will be a rally up from this 160 level. And that's something we're going to watch on Friday's action into next week and through the remainder of January. As always, be careful and safe. This is Corey Rosalyn with tonight's Theo video update for January 27th, 2022.